Good afternoon. Welcome to the afternoon edition of Special Edition with your host, Grieving. That's not your host. That's the Frozen in Grief. That's what it is, with Betsy Wurzel and her imaginative producer, Lillian Cauldell, or sidekick, however you want to look at it. So as you heard it from my lips to your ears, we're talking about being frozen in grief. No, it doesn't mean you're encased in ice or even have a bucket load of ice thrown over you. It means when you cannot break out and it paralyzes you from doing anything else. In case you're interested.
Yes. Hi, Lillian. How are you?
Hi,
everybody. Welcome to Special Edition, Chatting with Betsy. Yes, Lillian, we're talking about frozen in grief. Oh, I hear the echo again. I know, Lillian, that I'm on the right track for not being a professional person. I've been listening to a lot of TED Talks, and we all have the same concept, the same idea. What does it mean to be frozen in grief? There's a lot of people after their loved one dies, whether it be wife, partner, spouse, mom, dad, whoever it is, they can't function. They can't do their daily activities. They can't think of the future because their loved one has died. And then I highly suggest, if you feel that way, if you are that way, to seek professional help. That comes the time where you really do need to seek professional help. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shame with that. I said this every week. I'm going to keep saying it, Lillian. Call up your senior center. Call up your mental health facilities. If you're in New Jersey, there's one in Piscataway, the I believe it's called Behavioral Institute, associated with Rutgers, Robert Wood Medical School. They have programs. Call them up. There are all types of places that you can go for help. And the senior center, where I go, she calls me up, it's for free. I had to say, listeners, that the one thing Matt's death taught me is to enjoy life to the fullest and not be frozen in grief, because life is too short, number one. Number two, I don't want to be frozen in grief. I want to move forward. I want to live my life to the fullest. And even if it's enjoying an ice cream cone or a piece of cake or a cup of tea or whatever to the fullest, I'm going to do that. And I had to remind my son, Josh, slow down when you eat. Don't inhale it. Enjoy it. Matt couldn't live his life to the fullest with Alzheimer's. He did the best he could up to a certain point where it could not be done anymore. And I couldn't live my life to the fullest at that time. I'm ready to live my life to the fullest. So what does that mean? That means I want to go on living. I'm still continuing with Chatting with Betsy. I'm still running my #Kick Alzheimer's movement group. I am still functioning in my life. Do I have the widow's fog? Am I in a daze a lot? Yes. Do I have my times of grieving and sorrow where I weep? Yes. But I am still moving forward. There are some people who leave a room exactly like it was and don't change.
They build a shrine.
Yes,
it's a shrine.
Yes.
You see those little shrines all over the street where people got killed in car accidents? That's what they're doing. It's not a memorial, it's a shrine. And whether it's their fault or somebody else's fault, you really shouldn't build a shrine to your loved one. They're not a god. They're a human. And I'm getting awfully tired of people telling me, well, if something happened to my significant other, I don't know what I'm going to do. Really? I understood back in the 18 and 1900s, there wasn't too much for a woman to do after a husband passed. Husbands didn't have that worry. They just got remarried again. It was accepted and it was pushed on them. For a woman, once she became a widow, it was very hard to get out of because she couldn't go out on the internet and start dating. So it really bothers me when I have men tell me, oh, if something happened to my wife, I'm going to follow her to the grave. And I'm looking at them saying, really? You're that weak inside? There's no reason for you to be following your loved one to the grave unless she's in her 90s and you're in your 90s. That I can understand because you've been married 70 years. But anything else? No. I just think you're copping out and taking an easy way out of life because you don't want to face it by yourself anymore. Well, find some of that courage that men keep on talking about and throwing into the female's lap. And put some backbone into it. How can I talk this way? Because I had a next door neighbor. She lost both her husband and her boys in World War II. She remained a widow from the rest of her life. You know what she told me before she died? I regret not ever getting remarried again and having a full life. It's a little late.
That's right. Speaking of the older days, Lillian, I just thought of something. There was a series back in the 70s called Centennial about the American Indians and how the Midwest and how they went out west and how people came over from Europe and conquered. And I forgot what tribe it was, but the woman's husband died and she had to stay outside her tent and die. She couldn't get remarried. She couldn't have food. And her daughter was very upset. But that was a tradition, that this is what that culture did at that time.
Not that different from the Indians in India, where in those days when the husband died, the woman was burned alive on his funeral pyre.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Yes.
That's awful.
Yes, it is.
That's awful. I get a little impatient, Lillian. Maybe I shouldn't, but I don't know maybe it's impatient. I don't know what other word to call it when people say, oh, my husband, my wife died, my mom, my dad, I can't go on living. I'm going to die too. I want to die too. It gets me mad because there's people who are dying who
they don't have much of a say in it. They're going to die no matter what they do. And here you are, physically and mentally healthy, and you're copping out.
Exactly. That's easy, folks. I'm going to tell you, straight up. It would be very easy for me to sit in my home and go, woe is me, and feel sorry for myself and not function. But that's not how I am. I'm a fighter. And I'm not giving up on life. I want to live. If I meet someone again, fine. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just not ready for it right now. But I'm not opposed if I were to meet somebody. If this pandemic didn't happen, I told you I would have went to a dance. And it's okay. I want to tell everyone, it's okay to enjoy life after your spouse dies, even if you weren't a caregiver. You need to go on living. There's so much to live for. Do you have grandchildren? Is there a way you can go to well, maybe not now, but a soup kitchen, volunteer at a nursing home, a hospital? There's people, be a tutor. Are you a retired teacher and you could tutor somebody? Even via Zoom. I see that that's a big thing now, tutoring via Zoom or Skype or whatever you use. People need help. They really do. And especially at this time, there's no reason to just sit there, wither, and die because your loved one died. There's people who can't even go to the store. They won't celebrate a holiday. Now, I'll go into holidays later on. That's a whole nother show. And I already told Josh, if I feel like decorating, I will. And if I don't, I won't. We already acknowledge, yeah, holiday season's going to suck this year. Why? Because Matt was dying at that time between Christmas and New Year's. But I want to focus on his life, Matt's life, not his death. And I think we need to focus on the life of our loved one. Would they want us to be sitting here wallowing in self-pity? What would they want? I know I told Nat, I told him years ago before you even had dementia, I want you to get remarried. I would even interview wives for you if I knew I was dying. I want you to enjoy life. That's what I would want. That's what I want for Josh. I already told Josh, if I die, I want you to go on living.
Absolutely.
And
there's so many kids out there who need grandparents. There's so many kids out there who could use a big brother or a big sister or just somebody to talk to. Tell you what, folks, it takes you a long time to really blossom, somewhere around 24, 25. Some people keep blossoming forever. Life is tough. Why make it easy on death? Cheat it for a few more years. Hell, I didn't expect to fall in love again, and yeah, I did. And he's not even from the United States. And I'm willing to go to his country and live over there. You cannot foresee the future, and you really shouldn't want to. That's what makes living life so exciting. You never know what's going to happen or turn up next.
That's right. I had to give my mom as an example, Lillian. My dad died 8 years ago. So my mom was 82. Yeah, 82 at the time. My mom, God bless her, she volunteered at a hospital gift shop twice a week, played mahjong, played cards, took her friends to the doctors, took her friends to the salon. My mom had open heart surgery last September and almost died. Took her a long time to get back. She's driving now. And she is, well, because of the pandemic, she's not playing mahjong, but she goes out when she can. My mom has a zest for life. And she is a great role model for me. And, there's the term, as long as you're keeping busy. And I want people to know this. Keeping busy is good, but don't keep busy to run away from your grief, which people do. Face your grief. This is what we have to do. This is why I'm blowing the lid off of the subject. Face your grief. Say it sucks. Say you're sad, you're mad, you're angry. Scream, cry, punch walls, pillows if you have to. Get it out of your system. But don't stifle your grief and don't stay frozen in it. I love that song from Frozen, by the way. I used to play in the daycare every afternoon because especially the girls, they just loved it. And if you listen to that song, the girl is singing about the past is in the past. She's moving forward. No, we don't get over losing our loved one. And you don't have to. I'm not going to get over losing Matt, but I'm moving forward. I want to honor Matt's life, but I want to live for myself first and honor Matt's life. And that's how I feel about grieving. I don't want to stay frozen in grief. I'm stubborn. I'm a fighter. I want to move on. Who knows what will happen? You know what, Jeannie White, who's station manager, she's always saying to me, Betsy, maybe you'll be on a TED Talk. Who knows? That would be awesome. If anyone's on TED Talk.
Well, you got to think big, and you have to think beyond your own personal needs. It's a lot easier to stay stuck than it is to move forward, because once you start moving forward, you're in unfamiliar territory. You've never been there before, and all of a sudden you have to handle things that you weren't handling before because you were involved in taking care of your spouse. But guess what, folks? You're not meant to stand still and feel the ground wash away from you like you do at the seashore. It's your job to get out there and do something with your life, whether it's just to take a walk or pop yourself on a bicycle and learn how to ride it. I've seen that the old-fashioned roller skates are back again, so you don't have to do line skating anymore. You can skate with 8 wheels, which I can do a lot better. I mean, challenge yourself. Tell yourself, well, if he was sick at home, wouldn't I want to go out and see what's going on? Wouldn't my spouse throw me outside and say, stop hiding in here with me? My spouse did. He scolded me for not going out. He says, what are you afraid of? I'll be right here when you come back. I'm not planning on going anywhere. Even if I wanted to, I can't. I won't remember how to get back here, so I won't go out. So he didn't go out, but then that was no excuse for me. And he made sure that I got out and got some fresh air every now and then, because he knew that sooner or later I would have to face the music without him. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering how it is trying to sleep after sleeping with somebody for 30 years, the first month it really is terrible. Or as my kid would say, it was a sugar honey iced tea night. You figure that out. But anyway, it's difficult. Does it get better? I want to say, yeah. I mean, I still hug his pillow or a stuffed animal, whichever is close by. But you do manage to get to sleep. Everybody has their own way of coping. But don't you die just because your spouse did.
That's right. I wear Matt's. This is funny. I wear Matt's boxers. I still have his T-shirts. I will wear it when it gets colder out as a nightie. I had 2 bears made of Matt's clothes, one for Josh and one for myself. And it's in the bed with me, and I pat it every night. And I say to Matt, come visit me in my dream. Come see me in my dream. And he does. Every night I dream about Matt in some way. And some people won't go into their bed after their spouse dies. And some people have trouble sleeping. I would see a physician about that. If you had trouble sleeping, try having some warm milk, meditating, try having some teas. There's a lot of tea out there in the market that has valerian in it, and that can help you sleep, to help you calm down. Chamomile tea, which is natural. I don't have any problem sleeping. My problem is staying awake. I'm still so tired. I fall asleep all the time. But
yeah, I had trouble staying awake too. That's why you see me drinking a lot of Pepsi, hoping that will help me. Diet Pepsi, but that doesn't really help either. I think it's a state of mind and what you can talk yourself into and what you cannot talk yourself into. And I think that it's important for you to realize that freezing yourself in that space of time with your spouse who is now dead, or even if they've just been diagnosed, it's not the smartest way for you to go through life, because it will become a crutch. And instead of being addicted to drugs, ladies and gentlemen, you'll get addicted to your crutch to help you cope, which is just as bad.
That's right. Some people do overshop. They will do excessive eating, drinking, maybe start taking drugs, need a downer to go to sleep and upper for during the day. I feel this way, Lillian. I have more of a zest for life now than I ever did. I'm going to be 63 in December. If I live to 70, which is a gift, that's 7 years. Anything after that, Bible says it's a blessing. So I don't want to waste my 7 years or whatever time I have left frozen, feeling sorry for myself. Now, that might sound harsh to people. But here, chatting with Betsy, I speak the truth. And I am very blunt, which I get that from my father. And I tell it like it is. And Lillian's the same way. You tell it like it is.
Yeah, I do. I may save the fairy tales for later to get myself to sleep with, but you have to be honest with yourself and face the music. Now, my mother used to use the radio to put herself to sleep with after my father passed. And you could hear that radio all over the house. But she was the only one in there, so it really didn't matter. But it made her feel better. She felt like she was having company. And in those days, they actually had good old fashioned word fights on the radio when the host didn't agree with whoever called in. And she would pay attention, and then when things settled down, the lull of the voices would finally lull her to sleep. And that was just fine. But during the day, she did a lot of volunteer work, not because she had to, because she wanted to. She wanted to get involved. She wanted to prove to herself she could do it. And she created a life for herself. Now, this was a lady who was brought up during the 20s. So she married after she finished grad school. She was married for over 60 years. She went from her father's house right into her husband's house. She never knew what it was like to be on her own 2 feet, and yet she did it because she knew she had to. And in fact, she enjoyed her latter years of being by herself. It didn't happen overnight, but she learned how to deal with it and, as they say, get over it.
Yes.
And the internet wasn't even up yet then. So all I have to say is this lady who went from her father's house at 24 to her husband's house and died at 86. And for 10 years before that, she lived on her own because her husband passed. That's pretty good.
That sure is. We have to move out of our comfort zone and challenge ourselves, even though that might be painful, even though it might hurt. You have to challenge yourself. I would fall asleep, Lillian, listening to a meditation on YouTube. There's all different kinds of meditation.
That's
I would
it.
sleeping one, relaxing one. I don't do that now, but I did in the beginning when Matt died. And it was weird because I had Matt at home up until he went to the hospital. So we slept in the same bed. And it is weird, being alone. But if I have to say this, women might get insulted by this, but that's okay. If you're a woman or a man, I'm going to say a man too, that is pampered by your partner or spouse, you better learn how to do things so that when they die, you're not like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. You better learn how to do those bills. If you can't mow the lawn like I do, I hire a service. You can the gutters. Oops. Oh, there we are.
Yeah, well, things are, the sun's in, the sun is out. So I don't know what it's going to do. And of course, that affects the internet. But yeah, you have to know that being married for a long time and then suddenly being on your own, although it's not suddenly, because if your husband is in hospice or your wife is in hospice, certainly you're going to be by yourself. But I will say you need to take advantage of the time that you have to start preparing yourself for the inevitable. So when the thunderclap or the lightning finally strikes and they are no more, you are not going, oh my God, what am I going to do? Now, I'll admit, I still have my 7-year-old grandson teaching me how to use my cell phone. But that's the only technology he's really helping me with because everything else I've learned to fumble and mumble my way through. And that's what you learn to do when you're on your own.
Yes. And I highly suggest at a time of diagnosis, if your loved one has dementia, cancer, any illness really, and even if they don't, learn how to do these things. Learn how to cook. Learn how to, if you want to, mow the lawn. I physically can't do it. So that's why I hire a service. And I'm not going to go up in the ladder and clean my gutters either. But, I had already done the banking. I wasn't one of these wives that was pampered. Maybe next time around, I did everything. So when Matt died, I was already independent, so that wasn't a problem. But I know somebody who is really having a hard time with her grieving because her husband did everything. Or maybe a husband whose wife did everything. You
And
have to,
he's left to learn how to do some things.
yeah.
So or learn finally to learn how to talk to the kids instead
Mm-hmm.
of having his wife run interference for him.
Yes.
There are all kinds of programs you can pick up from the free universities and also from the AARP. There are still a number of schools and communities that offer free services to people should you require them. And don't be ashamed or embarrassed or humiliated or anything else that you can possibly say. And also be honest with yourself. If you need the help, go and get it. It's not going to keep you from getting a good job.
That's right. And brush up on your skills. If you're out of work because you were taking care of your loved one and you know they're going to die, which is inevitable, keep up on your skills, keep up on your whatever your business is, so that you can go back to work if you choose to. You won't be so far behind. And caregiving teaches you many skills also, so you'll be well prepared if you should have to go back to work. A lot of times, Lillian, I think people use excuses. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm going to fail. I can't, move forward. You know what? You know what failing is, folks? Not even trying. That's what failing is. When you try something, you may not be successful the first time. So what? You try again. You learn from your mistake. The old saying is, Thomas Edison, it took him 99 tries till he figured out the light bulb. And he said, well, I figured out 99 ways that it didn't work.
And the most famous one for becoming published is some guy who wrote the Zen of motorcycle repair. And he tried over 1,000 times. And in the 1,001st time, he finally got somebody to pick it up and publish from it. And it was a bestseller. Who knew? But the fact of the matter is, if you let yourself become frozen and alienated, then you really are setting yourself up to go into a cycle that you'll never really recover from.
That's right. Also, Lillian, some people become frozen in grief from guilt.
Yes.
I have seen that. I would have, I should have, I could have. If I would have done this, maybe they would be better. I did this. Folks, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You can't undo the past. You can't undo what was already done. Learn from it, go forward. Most of it is probably unjustifiable guilt. I know myself, I felt guilty, and I I had to practice what I preach. I caught myself feeling guilty because the hospice didn't do their job right. Well, that wasn't my fault, and I did fight for Matt. I did the best that I could. You did the best that you could. One of my mom's friends, I know that she probably felt a humongous amount of guilt when her husband died because she just wanted him to have the radiation. He had cancer, pancreatic cancer. They gave him chemotherapy first. And they told her he has to have the chemotherapy first. You're talking a man who was 82, I believe, severe diabetic, heart condition, and they gave this man chemotherapy. It was my husband, I would have said no. But, to each his own. But she felt guilty. And when I went to visit, it was my mom's friend, and I went to visit, I won't say the name, my friend, he said to me, Betsy, I don't want to go for the second treatment. And I said, you don't have to. That's your choice. He said, I think I won't make it. But he went. Maybe his wife pushed him to do it. I don't know. But I feel this way. If your spouse is of sound mind and they don't want a treatment and they have a living will, you need to honor that. You may not agree with it. You need to honor it because you will feel guilty if you don't. I did not have a tube put in Matt. He did not want that. It was in his living will. I didn't want that for him. Why prolong? I wouldn't put him through that procedure. Matter of fact, a few years ago, when Matt was much more mobile, he had inner hemorrhoids, which we got taken care of. And I knew the doctor was going to want to do a colonoscopy. I said, no, absolutely not. And the doctor said to me, well, I could do a partial. You could give him a couple of enemas. He could run to the bathroom. I said, oh, no. Matt does not run. He's not going to tolerate that. There's no way he's having that done. So, you have to go by your gut. I have always went by my gut. Question. You do not have to have a medication or do a treatment if you do not want to. And don't make your spouse do it if it's not really necessary, if it's not going to improve their life. I mean, that's how I feel.
No, you're right. You're right. It's very difficult. And it doesn't get any easier, especially if they have dementia, Alzheimer's, or Parkinson's, because you're working with the brain. And the brain is not always the easiest part of the body to work with. It's a muscle after all. Besides being an organ, it's also considered a muscle. We know all about muscles, don't we? So give them the information all over again, Betsy, where they can find help. The AARP has stuff on it. There's a play and a podcast out on Alzheimer's, Parkinson, and dementia. Be on the lookout for that. I think it's on YouTube. It's put out by the Independent Women's Playwright Association. Look them up. I know it's been making the rounds. It's supposed to be quite good. So you may want to check up on that. Also, there is a lot of information now coming through about mental health and Alzheimer's and caregivers. Please look that up because that's very important. There's a big tie-in between mental health and Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's, because you're talking about the brain functioning, and that's what mental health is, folks. And if you don't think people with Alzheimer's don't threaten suicide, you're wrong. My husband certainly did 2 or 3 times. If he had figured out a way to do it, he would have killed himself.
Matt did too.
So don't think just because their brain is damaged is going to prevent them from thinking dark thoughts like that, because if they thought that a knife would do the trick, they would use it on themselves. So don't kid yourself.
That's right. Matt said many a times, I want to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. He did it, but he didn't know where the things were. But yes, I know someone whose husband did kill themselves.
Or they take their medication wrong. So you have to, my husband was furious that I doled out his medication. He says, don't you trust me? And I said, no. But that's okay. I don't trust me either, but I'm more in command of what I'm doing than you are. So you'll just have to trust me to take my medication the right way. And he understood that.
Yes.
They're very crafty. And sometimes, even though they may be affected in one way or another way, there are other ways in which they pick up on. They're very shrewd. Don't dismiss them because they're in their 4th or 5th stage of dementia and doesn't make sense to you. Because sometimes they have these, quote, shining moments when everything makes sense. So you have to be careful with that.
That's right. Ask your physician for a referral to a psychologist or a social worker. A lot of doctors have social workers in their office. Put them to work. Ask them, I need a referral. If you were employed or your husband is employed or retired, see if they had that employee assistance program. And you call up, you could get, I had received 8 free visits. Call up your local mental health clinics in your area. Some of them pay on a sliding scale according to what you pay. They cannot refuse you. Call up your
Call the
insurance.
suicide prevention line. They have a 1-800 number now. Call them up. They'll be more than happy to not only try to talk to your spouse who has the dementia, Parkinson's, or Alzheimer's, but oftentimes they will refer you.
Yes. Call up Medicare. Get a list.
Yes.
Medicaid. Call them up.
Call up the U.S. government. They have programs out there for you. You might as well take advantage of them. There's no guarantee they're going to be there by 2021, but they're still there for 2020. I mean, you have a government who somewhat is concerned about you. Take advantage of that.
Yes, and your local senior center, call them up and they will help you. My local senior center helped me navigate Medicare. They even have a program for if you need a handyman, but you have to fit their financial criteria.
You may also, if you have a college or a university nearby, call them up as well. Many of them have practice areas for their nurses or doctors or their medical technicians or whatever you want to call it, because they have to fulfill so many hundreds of hours as part of their program, and they'll have you come in. There's always staff there to oversee these folks. And I'm not just talking about 21 or 22-year-old folks. There are a lot of people in the 30s, 40s, and 50s who go back to school and get their medical degree or get their nursing degree. And they need this time in with patients to learn how to deal with what they learn in class and apply it practically. I took speech pathology and audiology for 3 years. I was always in a schoolroom or in an audiology clinic trying to track out my hours. And then the oversee of the professionals, I would try to do my best to help these folks. That's the only way you learn. That's why doctors have to do residences for exactly that reason, so they can take what they learn in class and apply it on a practical level.
That's right. I don't have the number, Lillian, but somebody who lives in New Jersey, this is for New Jersey people only, or if you don't have to live in New Jersey, but if your loved one lives in New Jersey, it's called Caregivers 2, the number 2, Caregivers. It's for free. And you can talk to someone. They can guide you to resources. I found that out last year. My doctor gave me the card, but I don't have the number. But you can Google it. Caregivers 2 Caregivers for New Jersey only. But if you live in Florida and your loved one's in New Jersey, they can use it.
The other thing you may want to be aware of, caregivers, that there's several of these facilities who are looking to train caregivers in addition to what they're already doing with their spouses. So when your spouse does pass along, you can get accredited by these folks and start working for them. And it's a plus for them because you already have the experience, and it's a plus for you because you'll be able to make some money for something you've already been doing for the past 3 or 4 years.
Oh, that's
so
a good
keep
idea.
your eyes peeled, because they've been on TV 2 or 3 times, and they're more than willing to give you certification and accreditation for what you've already been doing personally with your spouses. But this is a way for you to earn a living because you already have done it with your spouse, and therefore in their eyes you're being recognized for your time, as you would say, served plus some, and you can make a living that way.
Well, that's a good idea, Lillian. I should check that out myself.
You ought to. I mean, I have no idea what they're paying, but basically what it is that you've already doing caregiving, therefore you already know what you need to do, and we can provide you with the accreditation or the certification and train you in addition to what you already know, and then put you out there and get paid for it. And, for people who've been out of the workforce for 10 or 15 years, you're thinking, well, what could I do? I haven't done anything. Well, certainly you certainly have. And not only are you going to be recognized for it, but you're going to get additional training and then put back out and do exactly what you were doing with your spouse. And to me, that's a win-win situation. Because a lot
Yeah,
of these places have a good healthcare system already put into place to take care of their workers.
that's a good idea. I also want to suggest, Lillian, there are so many free webinars that are offered. I do want to mention Dementia Spotlight Foundation is having one Tuesday. Go on their website. It is about after caregiving, the effects of after caregiving. I'm going to attend it myself. I think it's great for people to know ahead of time. Teepa Snow, always having a webinar or something going on every day live. But it's up to you, the individual, to want to improve yourself and educate yourself.
Check out YouTube.
You
They have a lot of stuff on dementia, on Parkinson, and Alzheimer's. And if nothing else, some of them provide you opportunity to ask questions. But even more important is you find other people who have gone through the experience so you can reach out and talk to them.
Yes, and I also want to say, I myself listen to motivational and inspirational speakers to help me. I go on TED Talks, YouTube. You could see TED Talks on there, or Google TED Talks. I've been listening to ones about grieving. I love Les Brown. I find he's very inspiring to me. Whoever you like, I learn something every time I listen to a TED Talk, and it gives me that oomph that I need, because we all struggle.
We all struggle. And there's one other thing. There's over where I live in Pennsylvania, in Epler, there's one of those circles, meditation circles that you can walk. I go over there every other day. And it does wonders for my mental physique. It gets you calm. And if you have any type of spiritual connection, which is what I'm talking about, it really does help you to get on that pathway. Because you're just not walking in a circle. You're connecting with the universe, which is what you should be doing anyway. Just a thought. So any final words, Betsy, before we wrap this up?
Yes. Please go on YouTube and subscribe to Special Edition, Chatting with Betsy, Grieving, and listen to my podcast, Spotify, Spreaker, wherever you hear podcasts, I'm there. You don't want to miss any of my shows. I have some great shows that I just did this week.
Absolutely. PWTR got 2 congratulatory notes from youtube.com. One of her channels, PWR Network _PWTR, had 538 minutes of continual viewing and listening to our programs. And on the second channel, PWR Network, we had 858 minutes of continually viewing and listening. And this is the third straight month in a row that we have gotten congratulated by YouTube on both our channels. So please, PWTR _PWR Network and PWR Network LLC. So please come and join us or visit us at https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. Soon to have a new template. I know you're going to love it. So have a safe week. Wear your mask. Keep your social distancing. Things are happening. The CDC has dropped the 14-day quarantine. Hooray for us. Deaths are going down. Let's keep them down, folks, because we know the dreaded flu season is right around the corner, and we don't want to fight both of these sicknesses on the same front. Thank you very much. And remember, special edition.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
with your host, Betsy Wurzel, next Saturday at 9 a.m. 10 a.m., excuse me, 10 a.m. You get an extra hours of sleep. Compliments of PWTR. Thank you and have a great weekend.
Thanks. Bye-bye.